Because the agreement that establishes the International Monetary Fund requires 85% to change that agreement. And if the United States government has 17% of the quota, then it can't be done, Mr. Gore, without your Congress. Similarly, we accept that there was and must be a commitment to unlocking concessional funding for climate vulnerable countries. There is no way that developing countries who have been graduated can fight this battle without access to concessional funding. We heard it on this stage from the head of my old alma mater at LSU.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching from. Welcome to my YouTube space. I have seen a lot of videos of Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, and I've never talked about her. I've never reacted on her video, but I've seen these videos, the speech that he gives out there, and I'm like, wow, Caribbean got a leader. Barbados got a leader. This lady or this woman is a true leader that we need, our black people need. Black people, these Caribbean countries, Jamaica, Africans need a leader like Mia Mottley. As you know, from the speech, I don't know if you are watching from Barbados, tell me if whatever she's talking is what she's actualizing on the ground, because Mia Mottley is advocating for reparations, promotion of Caribbean identity, advocating for climate justice and for small island states, global advocacy for African diaspora issue. He has cut across a lot or a number of issues that I see her as a true leader of black people. The black people needs a leader or need a leader like Mia Mottley. Let's watch this video and then we're going to talk, or we react, or we dive in it.
The elephant in the room, what a lot of Western climate diplomats tell me, is that leaders like yourself also carry a responsibility. Why are vulnerable countries still so debt-stricken? Why is there still corruption? What is your response to that?
You really want me to answer you?
I do.
Okay. Why is it that every time we talk about countries from the South, the first allegation is corruption? Last time I checked, in the USA and the UK and Europe, they're riddled with corruption, but nobody says that they're not capable of achieving their objectives because of corruption. Why is it that we're not talking about the fact that these countries became independent, having allowed those countries that colonized them to extract significant portions of their wealth, such that we had no proper housing, no proper education, no proper healthcare systems, no proper legal systems, no proper across the whole stream, and certainly nothing to do with building social capital like community development and cultural enterprises. And what has happened is therefore that we have spent the time since independence trying to give our people what the global north has taken for granted and has supported by the extrication of centuries of wealth to give their people out of our blood, sweat and tears. Now, when our blood, sweat and tears finances the Industrial Revolution, and the Industrial Revolution then causes the climate crisis, and then I have to pay for the consequences of the climate crisis because of the Industrial Revolution financed by our blood, sweat and tears, then I think they have no moral authority to tell me anything about the financing of the climate or about why we don't have enough.
Is it anger over this that fuels your energy?
Anger? Absolutely not. Unfairness, lack of justice. They're not angry. I'm just disappointed that humankind still wants to believe that there's one world for a set of people and another world for another set.
How many more countries must falter, particularly in a world that is now suffering the consequences of war and inflation, and countries therefore are unable to meet the challenges of finding the necessary resources to finance their way to net zero? This world looks still too much like it did when it was part of an imperialistic empire. The global north borrows between interest rates of between 1% to 4%. the global south of 14%. And then we wonder why the just energy partnerships are not working. Similarly, we ask ourselves if countries that want to finance their way to net zero and want to do the right thing can't get the critical supplies, will they not have to rely again on natural gas as that clean bridge? This is the bald reality. And we have come here to ask us to open our minds to different possibilities. We believe that we have a plan. We believe that there can be the establishment of a climate mitigation trust that unlocks $5 trillion of private sector savings if we can summon the will to use the SDRs, 500 billion of SDRs, special drawing rights, in a way that unlocks the private sector capital. We believe that that requires a change in the attitude of Congress. Because the agreement that establishes the International Monetary Fund requires 85% to change that agreement. And if the United States government has 17% of the quota, then it can't be done, Mr. Gore, without your Congress. Similarly, we accept that there was and must be a commitment to unlocking concessional funding for climate vulnerable countries. There is no way that developing countries who have been graduated can fight this battle without access to concessional funding. We heard it on this stage from the head of my old alma mater at LSU. We believe that it is critical that we address the issue of loss and damage. The talk must come to an end. And I'd like to salute Denmark and Belgium and Scotland for their own modest ways of trying to accept the precepts and principles of loss and damage as critical and as morally just. But for loss and damage to work, we believe that it can't only be an issue of asking state parties to do the right thing, although they must. But we believe that the non-state actors and the stakeholders, the oil and gas companies, and those who facilitate them need to be brought into a special convocation between now and COP28. How do companies make $200 billion in profits in the last 3 months and not expect to contribute at least 10 cents in every dollar of profit to a loss and damage fund? This is what our people expect. And I ask us, as we reflect on what a loss and damage fund can look like and who should access it, that we convene a special convocation that doesn't only involve state parties, but non-state actors such as the same companies. We believe as well that the time has come for the introduction of natural disaster and pandemic clauses in our debt instruments. I have said that if Barbados is hit tomorrow, because we have natural disaster clauses, God forbid if we are hit tomorrow, we unlock 18% of GDP over the next 2 years, because what we do is effectively put a pause on all of our debt and put it at the end for 2 years and put it at the end, and we pay back that money at the end. But what we get is the flexibility in the first 2 years to address issues of damage and loss. And finally, we believe that the multilateral development banks have to reform. Yes, it is time for us to revisit Bretton Woods. Yes, it is time for us to remember that those countries who sit in this room today did not exist at the time that the Bretton Woods institutions were formed for the most part. And therefore we have not seen, we have not been heard sufficiently. And if we are therefore to rise to the occasion, to play our part to stop the tragic loss of life that we have seen on these screens and the impact on livelihoods that we are feeling across our countries, then there needs to be a new deal with respect to the Bretton Woods institutions. And we need to ensure that they have a different view to their risk appetite, that we look at the SDRs, and that we look at other innovative ways to expand the lending that is available from billions to trillions. My friends, the time is running out on us. And yes, we have the power of choice. When asked what should he do when he became president of South Africa, should he pursue a path of vengeance or should he seek to build a state? Nelson Mandela chose to be able to build a state and to keep a country together. He chose blessings instead of curse because he believed that it would make a defining difference. When given the choice of how to treat to post-war Europe, President Truman settled the Marshall Plan that made the definable difference to the countries that were responsible, yes, for the destruction of so much and for the loss of life of so many. But in spite of that, they chose to rise above it. I ask us today, what will our choice be? We have the power to act or the power to remain passive and do nothing. I pray that we will leave Egypt with a clear understanding that the things that are facing us today are all interconnected. I thank President El-Sisi for his comments that there needs to be peace, because countries like ours continue to suffer as a result of a war that we have no part of, and a war that we want to see come to an end. Our people on this earth deserve better, and what is more, our leaders know better. Because while many of us may not have been alive during the great wars, the consequences of those wars still live with us.
This is immoral and it is unjust. If Glasgow is to deliver on the promises of Paris, it must close these three gaps. So I ask to you, what must we say to our people living on the front line in the Caribbean, in Africa, in Latin America, in the Pacific, when both ambition and regrettably some of the needed faces at Glasgow are not present? What excuse should we give for the failure? In the words of that Caribbean icon Eddie Grant, will they mourn us on the front line? When will we, as world leaders across the world, address the pressing issues that are truly causing our people angst and worry, whether it is climate or whether it is vaccines? Simply put, when will leaders lead? Our people are watching, and our people are taking note. And are we really going to leave Scotland without the resolve and the ambition that is sorely needed to save lives and to save our planet? How many more voices and how many more pictures of people must we see on these screens without being able to move? Or are we so blinded and hardened that we can no longer appreciate the cries of humanity? I have been saying to Barbadians for many years that many hands make light work. Today, we need the correct mix of voices, ambition, and action. Do some leaders in this world believe that they can survive and thrive on their own? Have they not learned from the pandemic? Can there be peace and prosperity if 1/3 of the world literally prospers and the other 2/3 of the world live under siege and face calamitous threats to our well-being? What the world needs now, my friends, is that which is within the ambit of less than 200 persons who are willing and prepared to lead. Leaders must not fail those who elect them to lead. And I say to you, there is a sword that can cut down this Gordian knot, and it has been wielded before. The central banks of the wealthiest countries
engaged in $25 trillion of quantitative easing in the last 13 years. 25 trillion. Of that, 9 trillion was in the last 18 months to fight the pandemic. Had we used that 25 trillion to purchase bonds, to finance the energy transition, or the transition of how we eat, or how we move ourselves in transport, we would now today be reaching that 1.5 degrees limit that is so vital to us. I say to you today in Glasgow that an annual increase in the SDRs of $500 billion a year for 20 years, put in a trust to finance the transition, is the real gap, Secretary General, that we need to close, not the 50 billion being proposed for adaptation. And if 500 billion sounds big to you, guess what? It is just 2% of the 25 trillion. This is the sword we need to wield. Our excitement 1 hour into this event is far less than it was 6 months ago leading up to this event. Can we, with those voices and these speeches from Sir David and others, find it within ourselves to get the resolve to bring Glasgow back on track? Or do we leave today believing that it was a failure before it starts? Our world, my friends, stands at a fork in the road. One no less significant than when the United Nations was formed in 1945. But then, the majority of our countries here did not exist. We exist now. The difference is we want to exist 100 years from now. And if our existence is to mean anything, then we must act in the interests of all of our people who are dependent on us. And if we don't, we will allow the path of greed and selfishness to sow the seeds of our common destruction. The leaders of today, not 2030, not 2050, must make this choice. It is in our hands, and our people and our planet need it more than ever. We can work with who is ready to go, because the train is ready to leave. And those who are not yet ready, we need to continue to ring circle and to remind them that their people, not our people, but their citizens, need them to get on board as soon as possible. Code red to the G7 countries. Code red to the G20. Earth to COP, that's what it said. Earth to COP. For those who have eyes to see, for those who have ears to listen, and for those who have a heart to feel, 1.5 is what we need to survive. 2 degrees, yes, SG, is a death sentence for the people of Antigua and Barbuda, for the people of the Maldives, for the people of Dominica and Fiji, for the people of Kenya and Mozambique, and yes, for the people of Samoa and Barbados. We do not want that dreaded death sentence.
Welcome back. These are speeches or speech of Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, talking about or supporting Black power, or talking against the imperialism, or talking against the supremacy, addressing the issues that's affecting the Black people. I've seen videos where Motley, first of all, Motley became the first female Prime Minister of Barbados in 2018. You know, it was historical in 2018. Now, he has been recognized by her handling of Barbados' economic challenges, including negotiation or negotiating of significant debt restructuring plan with international creditors. Under her leadership, the government has implemented a series of fiscal reforms aimed to stabilizing the economy and ensuring sustainable growth. Now, I can tell that from her speech, what she gives, she's so bold. She's bold, and if she's actualizing this boldness on the ground, then Barbados is a good country to live in. And we are looking forward for African countries. We are looking forward for all Black countries to find a leader who is not a puppet but a leader who is looking for the change of black people. Because black people, we are looking for power. That's what we need. And power will only come when we get good leaders, when you get leaders who want change, when you get leaders who want to see the other black people moving forward. Now, even Motley played a pivotal role in Republic transition in November 2021, where Barbados removed officially the Queen Elizabeth II as the head of state and became a republic, where this prime minister oversaw or was overseeing the historical shift. She came in power in 2018, and in 2021, the transition was done. For a country, a black country, to become a republic is a plus. It's a plus for a country to become a republic, because now you are not influenced anymore. Your decisions as a country is being done locally and not by the state. Now, Motley is advocating for reparations. She has been vocal advocate for reparation for the descendant of enslaved Africans. She has called on former colonial power to acknowledge the historic injustices of slavery, to provide reparation to countries in the Caribbean, including Barbados. This is part of broader movement in the Caribbean and Africa seeking justice in the impacts of the transatlantic slave trade and colonialism. And you may find African leaders, they don't talk about it. The mother Africa themselves, they don't talk about this. They are not bold to speak about this. We only see Nelson Mandela talking about it, and some opposition leaders, but the leaders in power, they don't talk about this. But this lady, she is bold to speak about reparations, to speak about or to advocate for reparations, promotion of Caribbean identity, because she has emphasized the importance of Caribbean identity and pride, encouraging a reconnection with African roots. This was exemplified in Barbados' transition to a republic, where the country removed the British monarchy as its head of state, symbolizing a reclaiming of sovereignty and move away from the colonial legacies. Wow. Advocating for Caribbean identity, transitioning the country to republic, so that to make it easy to reconnect with the roots, to go back to the roots. It's easy for Barbados as a republic to connect with the mother Africa than a country that is under colonial rule or the monarchy of England. And I think she is one of the leaders that want to see the change in black people. I think she is one of the leaders that will support the liberation of Africa. I think she is a leader who can join hands with Traore and other leaders who want to see change in Africa. We need more of these leaders. These are now leaders. They are not politicians. And Mia Mottley work extensively beyond racial issues. Her leadership and policy position have made her an important figure in advocating for the rights, empowerment, and justice of black people, both in Caribbean and globally. Okay, she's fighting for African diasporas. She's fighting for Caribbeans, while her counterparts are still the puppets to the white supremacy. But I get her not being the puppet to the white supremacy. And from her speeches, I believe she is a good leader. I believe she's what Caribbean's people need. She's what Jamaicans people need. She's what African need. She has this boldness when she speaks, and she calls a spade a spade. That's Mia. That's the Prime Minister of Barbados. I don't know what you have to say on her, because I don't have much to say on her, because the speech that she gives out speaks for itself. Tell me what you think in the comment section about her. Tell me what you think about the speech she gives out. Until next episode, we say peace be with you.